Welcome. Hi.
Hi. So yeah, we'll talk about AI adoption. I think the AI has been a topic all day now. And I think if you talk about AI, there's lots of discussions around the technology and around the latest models and what's going on. And I think what we'll discuss is if you look at the spectrum of AI as a technology that's changing to change management, kind of how the technology is being used by employees across organizations. We'll focus on the kind of change management part mostly and kind of discuss what has happened since GenAI and ChatGPT have occurred 2.5 years ago, or almost 3 years ago now, and discuss essentially best practices around that. And maybe some kind of context on us, and I'll start. I'm Lennard, one of the co-founders of Langdock. We are an AI platform for large enterprises. We started out 2 years ago in the digital economy mostly, so our kind of largest customers like a year ago so were Personio, Get Your Guide, SumUp, and so on. And the kind of enterprise GPT that was mentioned before is essentially our product that we productize for customers. And we now serve more than 1,500 customers, but just 2 years ago, we started out and we're essentially a team of 3 co-founders in San Francisco, thinking about what we would do. And then soon after, and I think this is kind of where the timelines overlap at some extent, just after a few months of essentially building out the product that we've built, we started a collaboration with Merck, who set out on their own in creating their enterprise GPT. And we kind of walked the timeline of how that happened and the effects so far. So I think that's the intro from my side. And I want to hand over to Walid, and kind of briefly before we start kind of going the timeline, it's where do you kind of currently stand with AI and GenAI usage within Merck?
Excellent. Thank you so much, Leonard. So first of all, welcome and good afternoon, everyone. I'm deeply impressed that you're still awake. So thank you for taking the time and being around with us. So my name is Walid. I lead data and artificial intelligence at Merck. Merck is a Darmstadt-based company active in healthcare, life science, and electronics. And we are 357 years old, and I like to call ourselves the oldest scale-up in the world. Because if in our history we had one key organizational capability was pivoting. So we started as a pharmacy, we started to mass produce medicines, and then also went into life science and electronics, also now being a vendor for specialty gases, machinery for the semiconductor industry. So you see a very broad field to a certain degree, and also a lot of applications, possibilities for data and AI. And our journey essentially started with ChatGPT, when everybody had this moment where they tried out and all of a sudden chatbots were not crappy anymore, but actually interesting because they were exciting. And at that point in time, I called up my team and I said, guys, we need an NDA with OpenAI, we need to talk to them. And they essentially told me, Walid, you've signed that NDA 9 months ago. And I said, well done, guys, ahead of the curve. But unfortunately, at the point in time, ChatGPT was not enterprise ready, obviously. And it took another few months until then the first enterprise services started to come up with Microsoft Cognitive Services. And that's essentially where I told my team, again, guys, we need to build a safe, compliant option for the company. That was before Microsoft Copilot, that was before ChatGPT Enterprise. And the team did a wonderful job. And in June 2022, already? 23, yeah. I'm getting old.
Time flies.
I'm getting old, and the war stories always get earlier and earlier, obviously. So 6 months after the launch of ChatGPT, we were ready with our first version of what we called MyGPT. We wanted to make it personal for our people, so we built it in-house, and I can tell you it was bad. It was very, very bare bones. It was very, and also the architecture in the background. So the front end was running in AWS in Frankfurt, and the back end was running on Microsoft Cognitive Services in France or Sweden, whoever had capacity for us at that point in time. So it was patchy at best. But then, in essence, adoption was great. People were really very appreciative that they could use it out in a safe and compliant environment in a very early stage. And then came Microsoft Copilot and ChatGPT Enterprise and Langdock. So when I told the team, guys, I really appreciate the blood, sweat, and tears, but unfortunately, this is leading nowhere. We will have to pivot. We will have to sundown our own solution. But here's the good news. You can decide what we should do next. So you talk to ChatGPT, to OpenAI, you talk to Microsoft, you talk to Langdock, and you tell me with whom you want to partner. And the team chose you. So it was not my decision, but ultimately there were some question marks in the early stage, because I still remember you guys had 4 employees, was you and the 3 other co-founders, and you had 4 customers, and all of them were pretty small at the time. So that was, you might say it was a gamble, or you might say it was a strategic investment. I'd rather go with the second, and if not on camera, I might confess to the first. But ultimately, we then decided to pivot and to start the journey collectively, and that was March 2024, yeah, get the dates right, when we then launched our updated MyGPT that we called MyGPT Suite, that was then powered by Langdock. And in the meantime, I think the headline says 25,000 employees as monthly active users. In the meantime, it's 27. And out of our 63,000 employees worldwide, 52 have at least logged in and tried it out. So that's our strategy, to say that we want to have the entry barrier as low as possible. So the only prerequisite to use MyGPT in our company is that you need to have a company account. And then you can log in and you can use it.
What was your rationale back, like when you decided to build out your own version, to kind of jump on this quickly and provide a kind of centralized, secure tool to employees? Like, walk us kind of through the reasoning there.
To be honest, it was a mix. It was a mix of excitement and fear. So the excitement piece obviously is, I want this, I don't know exactly how this will play out. I know that there is potential, a lot of potential, and I need the collective genius of the organization to test it, to play with it, and to come up with ideas that we can't come up as a central team in an ivory tower. And the second one was fear that actually our company data is exposed to outside services, that people go to ChatGPT and the free version that at that point in time didn't have an opt-out for data training, so anything you would put in would end up potentially in their training. And therefore also what we wanted to do is not be the AI police that tells you what you're not able to do, but ideally be the AI enabler by telling you there's a safe way, there's a secure way, and it might not be 100% of what you can get for free. By the way, there is no free, never a free. You always pay with something. It's either your data or your soul or whatever. Not your soul, hopefully. But that was the rationale behind it. On the one side, let's say maximize the opportunity. On the other side, minimize the risks.
Yeah, and I feel like that's like 2 years ago, and I think back then, like GPT-4 just came out, and like we were in San Francisco talking to like a bunch of other founders, but also kind of larger companies like Stripe and Palantir and so on. I feel like the whole mood was around this duality of excitement around like what will be possible, but also fear around kind of what will the future look like. And I feel like that was quite a timing, and kind of I think you came out of this, and I feel like lots of companies, and then kind of Stripe has built something like this for themselves and so on. Lots of companies kind of came out, and we talked about, I think the previous talk, someone mentioned about this enterprise GPT is like, it's cute, but like what you really want is agents and kind of larger things. And the way that we've kind of seen the space evolve in the last 2 years, essentially, if you start out providing access to all of your employees for these tools, that will kind of like layer on the kind of excitement part and not the fear part, because people are able to kind of then play around with these tools, start finding their use cases, building use cases on top, and just kind of being kind of upskilled. And I feel like that's something that you and your team have done quite extensively. So maybe we can kind of talk about the rollout, not in technical terms and models, but more in terms of organizational structure, the team that kind of how it was composed, and how you structured a rollout that essentially went from GenAI is new and we kind of have, like, are in fear of this thing, to now having like 28,000 people using this every month for their use cases. Yeah, to answer this, I will have to give some context. So our data and AI strategy at Merck consists of three pillars, or I like to call it the Holy Trinity, and it's not rocket science. You will find that in McKinsey and BCG slides, and in essence it is, to a certain degree,
a framework that is reproducible and reusable, but you have to be very consistent to really compound the values out of it. It's people, it's the ways of working / the operating model, and it's the technology piece. So the technology one is fairly simple. Obviously, I study computer science, so I can be very passionate about technology, but ultimately it's a mean to an end, and you just have to make sure that you make good technology choices. But choosing the right model or the right technology is not a strategy. This is just one piece of the equation. In our case, the operating model, and I'll talk about the change management in a second, the operating model is absolutely crucial because we are a global company. We are active in more than 60 countries over the world. We have 3 different businesses. So our default operating model is a federation, and that's also why we set up data and AI in such a way, we call it the hub spoke, where we ensure that we are, on the one side, orchestrated, and that we ensure that we can get economies of scale, but at the same time are also close enough to the customers. And the last point, and I believe this is also very crucial, is about the people, is about mindset, the skill set, and the behavior. And this is something that we are now for nearly 5 years are very much investing, focusing on as part of a data culture journey to make sure that the people understand why data is important, understand what the risks of AI are, and also feel comfortable to using it. So this has a lot to do with enablement, with upskilling, with training, but also with messaging. So being present, being very vocal about it. So just last week, we had our summer camp inside of our campus in Darmstadt, and I had 2 colleagues perform a data governance song. I mean, if you sing about it, people remember it. So it was the talk of the town for a day. And it's all of those small things that compound and that ultimately bring the culture. But I also have to say, if I may quickly, compared to other organizations and other industries, we have a slight advantage because as a science and technology company, we have a lot of scientists, and scientists are used to experiments and used to experiments failing. So essentially using AI and not working out in the first iteration is not the end of the world. It's additional data. So I tried this, didn't work. Okay, I come back 6 months later, or I try a different prompting. So we use that also in the packaging of the communication, and people were able to relate to it. Okay, understood. Most of them. I also had some colleagues where I explicitly told them in a training, don't do this. And the first thing they do is exactly that, and then telling me, I told you AI doesn't work. I said, okay. Maybe for you not.
And I think, like, just as a fun fact on the side, I think across enterprises, a song for your enterprise GPT is something we've seen more than once. I think this is something that kind of plays into the scheme of making AI more personal and kind of relatable. I think this is also, kind of in vein of giving access to employees, like using whatever tool, it makes it very relatable. Like if it's just this AI thing that you may be able to use, and you see on the news, it's kind of distant. But if you see your colleagues like Matthias and Sabine use it, it kind of drives the point closer to home that you should likely kind of spend some time thinking about how you can also use it. And I think this is something that we've seen in the kind of journey, kind of conceptually that we're usually seeing now. And I think that's also been mentioned before here is if you are able to kind of give your people access to these tools, they'll start working through what works and what doesn't work. And they'll kind of soon understand that quite a few things don't yet work. And sometimes that's kind of a lack of model capabilities, but sometimes it's just a lack of access or like tools that can be connected and so on. And what we are seeing essentially is that giving access creates a mandate to integrate more data into your AI hub, whatever that may be. And through that kind of mandate, you drive this change to enable people, and you have this flywheel of enabling people, them wanting more integrations, and kind of increasing the value of the ecosystem in itself. And once you have kind of enabled people and integrations to all of your source systems, you'll then be able to kind of think about quite reasonably how to build agentic workflows or augment and automate some types of workflows. But this is kind of, to us, what we've seen at least kind of in large-scale enterprises is like the third step after kind of creating positive momentum for the topic and integrating data internally. talking about the framework, like where do you currently stand in that? Like what's your current, like we're now like 2.5 years into the journey of GenAI, where do you currently stand and what are the kind of the things that you're thinking about now for the foreseeable future?
That's the point where I can use my pyramid?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I was born in Egypt, so normally if I have slides, I would always show a pyramid. And essentially, for me, it's the AI adoption pyramid. And I would say we've built the base layer to the pyramid. And the base layer to the pyramid is exactly this personal productivity that was already also mentioned in other talks. This everyday AI for everyone to be more, to be useful, to be a company, to be a concierge, to be something that is useful. I think this is the foundation because it makes the organization know about the possibilities but also the limits of AI so that people are knowledgeable, that they are literate about what AI can do for you and what it can't do. The second layer of the pyramid is essentially now exactly what we're currently looking into, and that you also mentioned, is the integration into everyday processes, integration into systems. This is where agents, I would say, are more part of a workflow, where you combine deterministic and non-deterministic systems to maybe save people 15 clicks in a UI that is not very intuitive, but yet you can tell them, I don't feel so well, please book me a sick day in the system. And then you just give it into a chat window, and then it pushes it to SuccessFactors or whatever your HR system in the background is. So that is now the second layer. And the ultimate layer, the tip of the pyramid, is the original tip of the pyramid of the in Gizeh was golden, and in this case also this one is golden. So everybody wants the tip of the pyramid, which is then when you have it in products, when you have it integrated in customer-facing workflows. But because then it drives the most adoption, those are the disruptive applications that everybody wants to have. And I always, let's say, quote my genetic heritage and say, don't try to build a pyramid from the top up. Doesn't work. You have to build a pyramid from the bottom up. So if you want to get to the golden piece, you have to do the groundwork. If your organization does not understand, does not breathe, does not live AI and data, importantly, and data, because quality data is your moat. This is what makes you different to the others, because everybody can buy the same AI. You can also invest into training your own models, but at least I didn't get that budget. You might be more lucky than I am. But ultimately, it's also not necessary, I believe, in an enterprise context. But again, you have to do the groundwork. You have to go through the people, because otherwise you will have a decoupled workforce that also feels threatened to a certain degree. And that's not the journey we decided on. We wanted to bring the people along to be also in the driver's seat, because also we need them and we need their profile to be adjusted accordingly.
Yeah, we see I mean, we talk to many companies across Europe, and what we see is that everybody who tries to do kung fu tricks before doing like the basics is building a very fragile system. And we've seen lots of people try it and then take it back and things don't work. But if you're able to kind of train this institutional muscle and create positive momentum for AI across all the experts you have in your teams, that's like the kind of most long-term useful thing you can do before then getting and kind of upskilling or like moving ahead with some of these automations. We see very few customer-facing agentic workflows in action right now, just because like the technology is not fully there for most use cases. I think it's starting now. I mean, there's AI call centers and so on that have been going on for quite some time, but they're also just kind of picking up speed now. But for most of the kind of customer-facing workflows, and then kind of, I think this is also what MIT is, I guess, referring to with the 95%, are things where people are trying to overstretch what the technology is capable to do right now. And I think it's like what we've seen is like if you invest in creating momentum and creating a skill set among your employees, this will kind of carry you the long way. And also, as AI gets better, and it's getting better increasingly fast, like you have models that are, if you compare the latest models, GPT-4, which came just out like 2 years ago or so, they've been becoming increasingly fast, increasingly cheap, and increasingly also able to kind of host locally or wherever you want. And I think this is something as maybe a takeaway. And I think how we kind of frame it usually is like innovation is tech-driven, but change is people-driven. And it's extremely important to kind of take the people on the journey. Yeah.
Agree.
Great. That was our 20 minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah. Just in time. Sehr gut.